The cold wind howled through the cemetery, carrying with it the scent of fresh earth and fallen leaves. The sky, a blanket of gray, threatened rain, as if nature itself mourned alongside him. Jacob Sterling, a billionaire whose name was synonymous with wealth and power, stood before the marble headstone of his only son, Ethan. His hands trembled as he placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grave, his throat tightening. It had been exactly 5 years. 5 years since that tragic accident. 5 years since the day his world crumbled beyond repair. Ethan had been his pride, his joy, the one thing money couldn't replace. But fate had been merciless. A drunk driver had stolen his boy's life, leaving Jacob drowning in guilt and loneliness. He had spent years burying himself in work, acquiring companies, signing deals, expanding his empire, yet none of it mattered. Every night, when the world quieted and he was left alone in his massive, empty mansion, the weight of his grief crashed down on him like an avalanche. But here, at Ethan's grave, there were no distractions. No work, no phone calls, no board meetings. Just silence. And pain. He exhaled shakily, brushing his fingers across the carved letters of his son's name. Ethan Sterling, beloved son. A heart too kind for this world. The words gutted him every time. A soft sniffle caught his attention. Jacob's brows furrowed. He turned slowly, expecting to see another mourner in the distance, but instead he saw a frail girl, no older than 10, huddled beside the gravestone. She was wrapped in a tattered coat, her bare feet peeking out from under a ragged dress. Her blonde hair was tangled, her face smeared with dirt. But despite it all, there was an innocence in her eyes. A fragility that struck him to his core. Jacob hesitated before speaking, his voice low but firm. "What are you doing here, sweetheart?" The girl flinched, hugging herself tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to bother you." Her voice was small, scared. It reminded him of how Ethan used to sound when he was caught sneaking cookies before dinner. But there was no playfulness in this girl's tone, only fear. His heart clenched. He knelt beside her, softening his voice. "You're not bothering me. But why are you here? Are you lost?" She shook her head, her blonde hair falling into her face. "No, I come here a lot. I talk to Ethan." Jacob's breath caught in his throat. "You knew my son?" The girl nodded slowly, her lips quivering. "He was my friend." His mind raced. Ethan had been a kind-hearted boy, always eager to help those in need. But how had he befriended a homeless child? "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she replied, shivering. Jacob instinctively shrugged off his coat and draped it over her small shoulders. It nearly swallowed her whole, but she clutched it tightly. "Lily, how did you know Ethan?" She hesitated as if afraid to say too much. "He used to come to the park near the school," she finally said. "Sometimes he'd bring me food. He'd sit and talk to me when no one else would. He told me I mattered." Jacob's vision blurred with unshed tears. This was the part of Ethan's life he had never known. The part that had nothing to do with wealth or privilege. His son had carried kindness in his heart, something Jacob himself had long forgotten. "Where are your parents?" he asked carefully. Lily's expression darkened. "My mom, she got sick. And then she was gone." She swallowed hard. "My dad." She looked away, her small fingers gripping the fabric of Jacob's coat. "He left a long time ago." Jacob felt his chest tighten. "You're alone." She nodded, her small frame trembling. "I sleep in an old bus behind the church. It's not so bad. Not so bad." The words twisted like a knife in his heart. "Lily, why do you come here to see Ethan?" She took a deep breath, then looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Because he told me something before he died." Jacob's pulse quickened. "What did he say?" "He said, if I ever needed help, if I ever felt scared, I should find his dad. Because you'd help me." A sharp gasp left Jacob's lips. His hands clenched into fists, his entire body trembling. Ethan had believed in him, even in his last moments. And yet, for 5 years, Jacob had done nothing but bury himself in loneliness. Tears streamed down his face as he cupped Lily's small hands in his own. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "No more sleeping in an old bus. No more being alone." Lily's lower lip trembled. "But why?" "Because you mattered to Ethan," Jacob whispered. "And that means you matter to me." A sob broke from the little girl's throat as she launched herself into his arms. Jacob held her tightly, realization crashing over him like a tidal wave. Ethan had given him a second chance, not to bring his son back, but to honor him. That night, for the first time in years, Jacob didn't feel alone. As he tucked Lily into a warm bed in his mansion, he sat beside her, holding her tiny hand. She was no longer just a homeless girl. She was family. And in the quiet of the night, he whispered a promise to Ethan. "I'll take care of her, son. I'll make sure she never feels alone again." And in his heart, he swore he could hear Ethan's voice, soft and full of warmth. "Thank you, Dad." Over the next several weeks, Jacob found himself changing in ways he never expected. At first, taking care of Lily was overwhelming. She was quiet, timid, unsure if she truly belonged in his world of wealth and power. She was used to sleeping with one eye open, used to rationing food, used to expecting people to walk away. But Jacob didn't walk away. He enrolled her in school, bought her new clothes, and made sure she never went to bed hungry again. More than that, he made time for her. For the first time since Ethan's death, he stepped away from work. He ate breakfast at the table instead of in the back of a chauffeured car. He read bedtime stories. He laughed. And slowly, Lily began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was truly home. One evening, as Jacob tucked her into bed, she reached for his hand. "Do you think Ethan would be proud of me?" she asked softly. Jacob swallowed the lump in his throat. "Sweetheart, Ethan would be so proud of you." He brushed her hair back gently. "And so am I." Lily smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Good," she whispered, closing her eyes. Jacob stayed by her bedside long after she had fallen asleep, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. For the first time in a long, long time, he wasn't just living. He had a purpose, and Ethan had led him to it.